Hello, I'm Lucas. So, today I've been inspired by watching a lot of videos of people discussing their more challenging stories in greater detail, and I've decided to give something similar a try, but mainly focusing on one hyper-specific aspect of my struggles that I've never really heard others experience or document before. So, we'll have to issue a quick content warning for the topics listed on screen. So, please feel free to watch something else that's more lighthearted instead. Like, please feel free. Like, I know, and also I know it would have been funny to release this on Halloween or something, but I would have had to wait like 5 months for that, and I didn't really feel like doing it. So, anyways, getting on with it. So this all takes place in the context of a larger story that I'm not going to delve into the details of in this video. For that, I've already made this entire long-winded animatic a while back, which you can choose to watch for more context and depth. Link in the description for the zero point 0.5 interested people watching. But in short, by the time I was in high school, I was forced down a path of fear and isolation by my abuser, who was my older brother. Well, I'll just say I had some very strong political beliefs. Fresh out of my 1.5 year COVID lockdown with him, my stomach was genuinely dropping at benign things all the time, especially every day at school, which, of course, I wasn't telling anyone about. In the end, my brain survived 3 months of this heightened state before it all came to a head on November 22nd, 2021. Now, I wish I could tell you I was actually in real danger that day, but all that happened was that I was on the listening side of a conversation with some music friends when suddenly they shared an everyday fact about themselves, which at the time was an irrational trigger for the kind of fear I previously mentioned. I wouldn't know it for a while, but that moment marked the last wave of panic my brain could withstand before essentially breaking under all the pressure. I remember feeling a sort of shock and numbness for like a week after. Like one day I went home and just resolved to do nothing and just lie in my bed and do absolutely nothing. Just to give you an idea. And normally I'm too like my mind just doesn't let me nap, but that day I did. Like, and it was the first time I'd done that in like years. But one night in particular, the voice hit. Now, the voice I'm about to refer to was not a hallucination, but rather emerged as a sort of companion inner monologue that the rest of me would go on to have basically no control over. The ideology of the voice was this: that my only irrefutable characteristics were my physical form. Anything else, ranging from my personality to my emotions and desires, anything that had to do with my underlying sense of self, was completely intangible, and therefore could not hold water as it did not actually exist. So, my sense of self was, from that point forward, constantly being infiltrated by barrages of fear after fear, as entire parts of my brain would inexplicably shut down at its every whim in order to fulfill these prophecies. None of it was real anyway, right? So, what was stopping me from being everything I feared the most at all times? So, as a prime example of this, I'm straight, but after November 22nd, the thought suddenly emerged that I was gay instead. I had a crush at the time and would daydream every day about having a partner, so to resolve the issue, all I had to do was embrace those feelings again, right? If I could have spoken to the voice out loud right then, you would have heard me say, "Oh my god, what did you just do?" Because all my feelings were gone. All of them. The person I was into, girls as a whole, everything. The immovable object had somehow just evaporated like it was nothing, and freaked out of my mind and clinging to denial almost like my life depended on it, because, I mean, it kind of felt like that. The voice would pick a friend of mine that I would have to defend my sexuality against, and then another, and then strangers at my school, and on the internet, and so on. Although this was the first and foremost theme, the voice was boundless, and at another point, like well after I became aware of my brother's influence, all this, it spun me as a racist and dared me to defend against that too. And then another week, I'd even be a misogynist, then a 1930s fascist, then a creep who belonged on a watch list, and you get the picture. Given how the more desperate you are to not think about something, the more it naturally continues to occupy your mind, this cycle was unstoppable because of what I knew my thoughts could do to me. Still, somehow. And honestly, it made the voice feel extremely sadistic. You can see elements of this with the way I portrayed it in my animatic as this smug, loud, and unstoppable octopus that was trying to drown me and wouldn't leave me alone. In real life, it even interrupted and choked my memories and emotions during therapy or conversations with trusted friends, simply again because of how well I knew that me getting any better heavily depended on my ability to communicate those things. And if I knew it, the voice knew it too, regardless of what it was. And looking back, I would honestly have to describe this whole experience as genuine psychological horror. Like, that is the best label I can come up with. Because even the best conventional labels like OCD, anxiety disorder, etc., never really resonated with me all that much. And this played a role in why it all felt so unfounded and isolating. I was battling the worst of this for months, and after every effort to relax, be optimistic, give it another week, cry it out, or connect with support, but failing to feel any relief from anything I tried, because again, the voice was always 10 steps ahead, there came a point of necessity where I internalized the idea that maybe the world wasn't the place I thought it was. Maybe it was okay and the natural way of things for this to happen to me. After all, when I looked around, everyone just looked happy for each other. I never found a voice that reaffirmed me or reprimanded the octopus for what it was doing to me in any meaningful capacity. And honestly, why would anyone bother trying? I thought to myself. Now, for however stupid this rationalization might seem, and probably is, please keep in mind that latching onto literally anything for more than 2 minutes was a godsend for me at the time. But the truth is, I didn't feel like I had to come up with any of it. And with this, I ended up carrying deep seated, bottled up anger and rage over all of this for literal years because of how shaken and violated I felt by it. Speaking of which, I should explain that, like, the pure, ride it out survival phase, like, goal is just to survive of all of this, lasted for around 4 months until like mid April. After that, the chaos gradually started to wear off and settle down for the remainder of the year and beyond. But instead of me feeling slowly rejuvenated, like you might expect, it kind of felt like I was starting to regain my bearings after a tornado destroyed my house. Like, thank the Lord that the storm is over, but now I'm aggravated about my freaking house. And in this analogy, part of this is because no one, not even myself, even knows what a tornado is. Even still, I felt I couldn't trust myself for my gut after what had just happened and what I'd learned about myself in the process. So, when the next school year rolled around, I started trying to be more open about this with friends and once and for all abandoned my hill to embrace conventional wisdom when it came to mental health and the healing process. Like, I was really trying to turn over a new leaf here. But it was a disaster. I had to be put in my place on multiple occasions because of how angry and stubborn I was. And it didn't help that my self esteem was below Earth's crust for my interpretation I talked about earlier, particularly over, the love attraction thing and still being completely dead somehow, despite me never not needing it to feel whole. Not even mentioning how Big Brother had already bullied me for like 5 years before that. On the one hand, I tried again and again to let my barriers down and be more open minded again for the sake of optimism and healing, thinking I might just have some hubris or some other flaw holding me back. But still, seemingly every day, I was freaking mad, hurt, and also scared, starved for answers and justice on the transcendent octopus, wishing I could just shake all of these smiling people by the shoulders, demanding somebody to address it with the full weight of my emotional being. But this attitude wasn't really received well by my peers, nor myself because of its hostility and the fact that it would have caused me to project. Also, it wouldn't have worked that well anyway because the octopus would have just hijacked my brain to interrupt the shedding of any emotional weight. So, speaking of which, while this was going on, I obviously started going to actual therapy as soon as the logistics were all finally in order. And for a while, it would be dominated by similar challenges, being that my brain still felt like a hostage situation and that I had a disdain and distrust in the system that I was trying but ultimately failing to set aside. But after a couple more years and multiple medication trials and the occasional tentacle or two still popping up every once in a while, still to this day, I've noticed myself recently feeling less petrified, at least a bit less petrified, and a lot more observant and reflective, but simultaneously more restless for some reason. I feel like this could be a sign that some of my emotional capacity is starting to thaw out, as only recently have I started to wonder if more might be tied up in this anger and protectiveness I'm noticing than just what's on the surface, which by the way, you have no idea how much I wish I could stop feeling towards my environment, because logically I know that good people don't feel overwhelmingly frustrated and betrayed every time they see or hear love and laughter around them every day. Overall, though, I have been getting better, though there are a lot of things related to this that I didn't have time to cover much. Notably, the social difficulties and embarrassment, including that, every time somebody asks me, like, hey, are you okay? What's going on? And the fact that I knew I couldn't really explain it to them in a way that was authentic without going into a huge long story. So, I couldn't really do much. My hands were tied and it sucked. And add on to that, family interactions, what happened to my brother, or just generally how it feels to be the square peg in a round hole world when it comes to mental health challenges, or to see myself that way anyway. So, if you watch to the end, thank you for hearing me out, because I know this might be unusual for me to make, like, as a video, but the truth is, we live in an unusual world. So, I hope you have a great day, and whatever you might be going through right now, whatever octopus you're at odds with, or maybe a swarm of insects or a deer in the headlights, remember that the passage of time is your greatest ally, and I never gave up trying despite all of what I just talked about. So I don't want you to give up either. I made a song once called Resilience, and I named it that because of this. Uh, so take away from that what you will. Thanks for watching.